All right, everybody, welcome back. It is Bare Bones Talk time. It is, Monday, 10 p.m. on January 27th, 2020. And plenty of stuff has been happening in the news and plenty of interesting topics to talk about tonight. So, why don't we start with the news wrap up and see where that takes us before we delve into the remainder of the things that I want to discuss today. So, starting with the Associated Press, because it is a pretty reliably neutral source of information. News of Bolton book sends jolt through impeachment trial. Let's see what this has to say. What? A single paper copy in a nondescript envelope arrived at the White House 4 weeks earlier. News of John Bolton's book manuscript about his time as President Donald Trump's national security advisor has exploded into public view, sending a jolt through the president's impeachment trial. I wonder why. The book contains an account of an August conversation in which Bolton says Trump told him that he wanted to withhold hundreds of millions of dollars in security aid from Ukraine until it helped him with investigations into political rival Joe Biden. So this is what you'd call a smoking gun in the legal sense. It's a dramatic eyewitness rebuttal to claims by Trump that his legal team that the president didn't hold up the aid for political reasons. Because of course they're going to say that, but of course they did hold it up for political reasons, and everybody knows it. And the main reason this is such a big splash in the news is because the Republicans are already planning to acquit Trump, but that's much harder to pull off if you don't have a giant smoking gun proving even to your own constituents that you're lying sacks of shit. Let's see. The account immediately gave Democrats new fuel in their pursuit of sworn testimony from Bolton and other witnesses, a question expected to be taken up later this week by the Republican-led Senate. Bolton has already told lawmakers he's willing to testify despite the president's order barring aides from cooperating with the probe. Because apparently Bolton, as amazing as this may sound, apparently respects the law more than the president. Within hours of the first report, a pre-order link was posted for The Room Where It Happened, a White House memoir. The homage to the song from the smash Broadway hit Hamilton is styled cheekily inside an oval on the image of the book cover released late Sunday. Bolton's account was confirmed to the Associated Press by a person familiar with the manuscript on the condition of anonymity to discuss the book. It was first reported by the New York Times. White House aides have harbored concerns for months about what Bolton might reveal in the book. In other words, they're worried he will actually tell the truth. Believing the former advisor harbored a grudge over policy and personal differences with the president. And that's just them trying to muddy the waters to make it sound like Bolton might make shit up because he's mad. Right? Not least about how he left the administration, Trump insists he terminated Bolton while the former aide has maintained that he quit. Bolton's acrimonious departure from the White House came a day before Trump ultimately released the Ukraine aid on September 11th. Since leaving the post, he has avoided publicly commenting, instead quietly writing, the 528-page book, which is set to be published March 17th. Despite its delivery to the National Security Council, hello Nietzsche, welcome. Last month, for pre-publication review, the book's contents were kept to a relatively small circle in the White House that did not include members of the communications staff. Such a review is standard for works of former officials with security clearances. They must be shitting themselves over there at the White House, realizing just what a smoking gun this is. I need a sip of my coffee because this is delicious. Oh man, okay. No White House personnel outside NSC have reviewed the manuscript, he said. Still, officials in the White House Council Office have briefed on some of the substantive claims, blah, blah, blah. He wouldn't say whether Trump, who last week offered reporters his most expansive explanation for why he didn't want Bolton to testify before the Senate, had been briefed. The problem with John is that it's a national security problem, Trump told reporters in Davos, Switzerland on Wednesday. He knows some of my thoughts. He knows what I think about leaders. What happens if he reveals what I think about a certain leader and it's not very positive, and then I have to deal with that on behalf of the country? Maybe you shouldn't have been a fucking dick then. Maybe you shouldn't have been bad-mouthing other national leaders because you're such a sanctimonious little piece of shit. Bolton said they made copies of the manuscript. It's going to be hard. It's going to make the job very hard. Trump called Bolton's claims false on Monday because, of course, he's going to call them false because they could convict him because he's guilty as fuck and everybody knows it. Acknowledging he hadn't even seen the manuscript. It's false. I haven't seen it, but I know it's false. I know it's false without seeing it. I don't need to see it because I'm that smart. I'm so smart. I'm the smartest guy. I'm a stable genius. Blah, blah, blah. Sales this, sales that. Timing's a suspect. Who cares if the time... You know what? It's not that the timing is suspect. It's that the timing is inconvenient for the Republicans in the Senate who are planning to acquit Trump without caring how guilty he is. Yada, 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 yada. Yada, 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 yada. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, 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 blah. The White House has requested that Bolton remove material it considers classified. The person said, I bet you they're going to say anything that would incriminate Trump is classified, because of course they would. Yeah. So, yeah, Trump's in deep shit. He knows he's in deep shit, and he's trying to weasel out of it. Welcome, Ryan Michael McDonald. Hello. I'm not going to dig into the Kobe death. Number one, it's been beaten to death in the news already. Thank you for the follow. And number two, it's sad and depressing, and I think we've dwelt on the death of that particular athlete and his family, etc., quite long enough. So here's more Bolton-related stuff. Yada, 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 yada. So more about the book. Yeah, one of the things that you're going to see is Trump is threatening to use executive privilege to try to prevent the contents of that book and Bolton's testimony and such from ever reaching the hearing in the Senate. The problem with that is the Supreme Court already dealt with this issue like decades ago, saying that if a president is being impeached, that essentially using executive privilege to protect himself takes a back seat to the Senate's and the Congress's generally ability to subpoena him and demand witnesses and documents and testimony and whatever else. And this is the really amazing part. The ruling on that from the Supreme Court was unanimous. It was unanimous. So if there's any change in that policy, it would be literally spitting in the face of a previous Supreme Court ruling that was so blazingly obvious in the eyes of the justices that everybody from both parties absolutely voted that way. So there's no way it's legal for Trump to use his executive privilege to try to defend himself here. Yes, that's true, Nietzsche, but again, he shouldn't have to rule on anything. It should just be assumed that the Congress can and should and must call any and all witnesses and subpoena any and all documents into evidence for purposes of the trial. I mean, seriously, what is a trial if not the presentation of evidence and the questioning of witnesses? You know, what else is it, you know? So, yeah. God, I'm so sick and tired of that. Harvey Weinstein sexually assaulting people left, right, and center, now getting his comeuppance in court. Ryan, in what way are you calling it a kangaroo court? Because I believe it is, but I'm curious to know if you're seeing it from the same perspective that I am. Harvey Weinstein accuser Mimi Halei testified on Monday that weeks after arriving in New York for one of his shows, she found herself fighting in vain as the once revered showbiz honcho pushed her onto a bed and sexually assaulted her, undeterred by her kicks and pleas of, no, please don't do this, I don't want it. I can only imagine the horror of something like that. That is just unbelievable. So yeah, she described in tears how the film producer turned a friendly meeting into a terrifying ordeal. Good God. Was kicking, pushing, trying to get out of his grip. He held me down and kept pushing me to the bed. Every time I tried to get up, he pushed her down. Ugh. Yikes. How bad is it if you have to wonder, if I scream for help, will anyone hear you, you know? Ugh. This is not an uncommon thing, by the way. I spent a while working on the board of the local domestic violence and rape crisis center in my area, and a lot of women who are in that circumstance simply kind of mentally check out and let it happen because they're scared that if they resist, not only are they going to be a rape victim, but they're going to end up a murder victim on top of that, so they hope that they won't die if they just acquiesce. Oh my god. Yep. I hope that guy goes to prison for the rest of his life. Not even kidding. Auschwitz survivors warn of rising anti-Semitism after 75 years. Sanders wrote an article on what? You need to be a little more specific there, Ryan. Survivors of the Auschwitz-Birkenau death camp prayed and wept as they marked the 75th anniversary of its liberation, returning Monday to the place where they lost entire families and warning about the ominous growth of anti-Semitism and hatred in the world. We have with us the last living survivors, the last among us who saw the Holocaust with their own eyes, Polish President Duda said at the commemoration, which included the German president as well as Jewish, Christian, and Muslim leaders. The magnitude of the crime perpetuated in this place is terrifying, but we must not look away from it, and we must not forget. And I agree with that. Oh, so you're basically here to troll and be an anti-Bernie guy? Is that what you're saying, Ryan? Because that's not funny, it's not really a joke, and if that's what you're going to be talking about, I'll delete those comments from you. You're welcome to participate in the conversation in good faith, but if you're here just to troll, that's not what we do here. So you tell me, were you here to... Okay, so you're here to troll? Is that what you're trying to say? Because, what we do here at the Bare Bones Talk show is we try to actually have civil conversations with the people in chat so that we can actually have a conversation instead of it just turning into a mudslinging mess, right? So if you have a differing opinion than I do, you're more than welcome to express it, but you don't get to just be a troll. So I would rather have a civil discussion where you actually participate than have you troll a few lines and then get banned, because that's not useful for anybody. Our talk, what are you trying to suggest there? You would have to provide some kind of evidence that Sanders actually said that. And here's the thing. As somebody who has direct experience with victims of crimes like that, women in that circumstance very frequently go along with it because they're terrified of being murdered. Yeah, I've never heard of a thesis from him about that, but, again, if you can produce evidence of it, then we'll take a look at it. But if you're just here to troll or mention that one document from like 50 years ago, which people on the right side of the political spectrum like to take out of context and such, then, that's not really a valid entry. And again, if you're going to make a claim, provide your citation so that we can take a look at it. Ryan, there's a document that Sanders wrote back in the day that was a short essay, which people on the right like to frame in a way that it doesn't accurately represent what it was. And that's a whole subject for an entire show. If you want to go into that, we can do that another night. If you are claiming that he wrote a thesis, which is a very big document, like I don't know if you've actually had any postgraduate studies, but a thesis is a whole other animal than an essay. So if you're claiming he wrote a thesis on something, produce a link to the thesis. So the group gathered under the enormous heated tent straddling the train tracks that transported people to Birkenau, the part of the vast complex where most of the murdered Jews were killed in gas chambers and then cremated. Auschwitz was liberated by the Soviets in 1945. Now you're the one trolling. I was actually talking about something relevant. Okay, so let me make this clear. When people talk about documents written by people, etc., if you're going to bring it into the discussion, you need to provide a citation so we can actually bring it up and look at it and go over it. Okay, I don't let people on either side of the political spectrum get away with just making claims without providing citations. Okay, so let's try this again. I didn't say Sanders wrote a thesis. I said an essay. You said he wrote a thesis, and I am waiting for a citation of that. I'm just really tired of Bernie having stuff misattributed to him lately, including the lie that he would have told Elizabeth Warren that a woman can't win the presidency. Okay, so you're talking about the essay. That's fine. So, if the point you're making here is that women do frequently acquiesce to the crime of rape in order to prevent themselves from being murdered, then that is absolutely true. Um, I can tell you that for a fact because I have literally spoken with victims who did exactly that because they were terrified of being murdered, usually by somebody they knew or were in a relationship with who decided to rape them and then threaten them with violence. The partners in those situations were often violent beforehand. Okay, so let me just scroll up here for a second. The thing that actually has me frustrated and made me concerned that you were trolling was you made a statement that was simply the two words women rape, which sounds like you're talking about women perpetrating these crimes that we're talking about Weinstein doing here in the way that we're seeing it in the Weinstein criminal trial article. Um, so, if you're going to say things here, it's usually better to express yourself clearly because we're not having a verbal conversation over a voice channel. So, inflection doesn't matter, tone doesn't matter. The only thing we have to go on when you're in the chat is the specific words that you type. Yes, but what you said was women rape. That is a sentence. The subject is women and the verb is rape. It is a statement that women are rapists. You had a two-word sentence there. So you need to scroll back and you need to actually look at what you wrote. Okay, you're going to see a lot of people show up here if you spend any time on this show, and they will make all kinds of bizarre claims, and the only thing that we can use to tell what people are saying is what they type. And when part of your claim is women rape, that nothing to do with the topic at hand. So, okay, it's not nice try. Scroll up and read your own messages. The first thing you said here was yo. The second thing you said was kangaroo court lol. The third thing you said was Bernie Sanders wrote and article on that. And the fourth sentence was women rape. Those are your exact posts. So if you do not intend to, say that women are rapists, don't say women rape. Learn to use complete sentences. Learn to speak clearly. Jeez. I have to ask, is English your first language because you don't write like it is? And if that's the case, then I'll grant a little latitude here under the assumption that your command of English is not that great. Because, like you said, yeah, writing an article on women rape. Like, a correct sentence might be, he wrote an article about women being raped, period. But like women rape, that it's tough to make out what you're saying when you use bad English and you use sentences like women rape, as if that does not indicate that you think women rape people. Okay, so you're obviously not interested in trying to communicate clearly here, and you're not really interested in acting in good faith, and that's on you. I'm willing to have a discussion, like I said, but if you're not going to use complete sentences, if you're not going to express yourself clearly, it's very hard to have a conversation. And no, I don't have. The citation has not been posted in this chat today, so I don't know where you think you've got the citation already involved here. But again, if you want to participate in the conversation and you're using unclear language, you're going to have a hard time. I can't make you write in, useful, clear English. But if you're not going to do that, don't expect people to understand you. And it sounds like what you're trying to say is that you were trying to make a point that's in accordance with what I was saying, which is great. And if we agree, fantastic. If we disagree, we can talk about it. But if you don't convey your ideas clearly, I can only work with what you type. You're not in a Discord talking to me out loud where we're having, a conversation. Okay, so we're getting warmer here. Okay. Huh. So sorry that there's a miscommunication there. How come I don't read websites with dark mode on? Because I'm old and I am used to reading black text on white screens, and I'm pretty sure dark mode is black screen with white text or something, if I'm correct. But I mean, is there some reason why that's preferable? I'm not sure if it makes a huge difference. Is there some advantage you can specify to using dark mode instead of regular? I just honestly, I've never considered turning dark mode on. Never occurred to me. By the way, the large gulp is from my very large mug of coffee. After the end of the war, the world finally saw pictures of gas chambers. Nobody in the right mind wanted to be associated with the Nazis, he recalled, but now I see something I never thought I would see in my lifetime, the open and brazen spread of anti-Jewish hatred. Do not be silent, do not be complacent, do not let this ever happen again to any people. I have to agree with that. In the United States, we're seeing a massive upsurge in very brazen hate speech, hate crimes, anti-Semitism, racism, bigotry, just plain outwardly being vile to other human beings. And it has directly coincided with the presidency of Donald Trump. And the general thinking on that is that Trump embodies a lot of those kinds of ideals. And, as the leader behaves, so the public will tend to express themselves. So the people who normally would think, oh, I dislike this group, I'm a racist, I'm a bigot, I'm a whatever, but I dare not say that in public because it's not publicly acceptable, have been emboldened by Trump's behavior, giving kind of a sort of nod and a wink and an elbow seal of approval kind of thing to that kind of behavior. And I could only imagine if you're a survivor of Auschwitz and you see that kind of behavior rearing its ugly head again, like having actually lived through where that behavior leads, it must be terrifying to those people. It must be absolutely mortifying to anybody from the demographic of, like, death camp survivors. And again, Ryan, I am sorry there was a misunderstanding there, and I take my share of blame for that. So, yeah. Let's see. 93-year-old survivor said that the destruction of the Jews began with small steps that were tolerated. What began with banning Jews from sitting on benches in Berlin evolved in incremental steps to ghettos and death camps, and that such horrors could happen anywhere, even in the United States. Auschwitz did not descend from the sky, he said, crediting those words to Austrian President Alexander Van der Bellen. Among those present, calling for people to not be indifferent, he said, because if you are indifferent, you will not even notice it upon your own heads, and upon the heads of your descendants, another Auschwitz descends from the sky. It's really kind of flabbergasting to think that, anybody is out there who survived these things and is telling us that they see the process in motion again, and people are dismissive of it, So, our talk, again, is there some advantage to dark mode? Is there some specific reason you think it's the way to go? I'm not even sure how to turn dark mode on. Let me see if I can find that and see what it looks like. No. I don't know. How do you turn dark mode on? I have no idea. Anybody know how to turn dark mode on in Firefox? I don't know, reading black on white text online hurts my eyes so much. It's Firefox. Let's see, options. Fonts, files and applications. Oh, we actually have to get an extension for that? Alright, By Bernard. It's not, since it's not something that I can guarantee is a trusted item, I'm not sure I want to install that. No, I do not have ad block. I am old and not, I never really thought about ad block, so I've never used it. I have the, whatever's available in Firefox normally by default, like a pop-up blocker, but I don't have an ad block plugin. I've heard about them, but I've never tried one. So I use black mode mostly, says Nietzsche. I don't force it on everything if it doesn't native support it. It's just easier on the eyes. So is that the same extension you use, Nietzsche? I don't want to install something where you look at it and it specifically says this is not monitored and we can't guarantee it's safe. Like, that doesn't seem like something I want to download and install. I use dark themes in my OS and enable dark mode on websites that support it as an option, such as YouTube. Alright. Where do you turn it on in YouTube? Because I was going to actually look at a video with you guys. So where do you turn that on in YouTube? Yeah, where do you turn it on? Dark theme. Translators. Oh, that's interesting. I mean, we can stick with this for the time being. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. Okay. So yeah, I wanted to take a look at this video with you guys since we're going to talk about guns. So My stance on guns generally is that we need to do some common sense stuff to try to mitigate the really awful problem we have with gun-related violence and death in this country. And the video here contains a lot of information that I find to be really on point and informative, so I wanted to share it with folks tonight and see what they have to say. So let me change the banner at the top of the screen here, and since we're going to be focusing on this particular topic, whoops, there. And, yeah. So let's watch the video.
If you've been following my channel for a while, you know that every once in a while I like to put out a video that completely destroys my subscriber count or ruins my like to dislike ratio. So in keeping with that spirit, let's take a few minutes to talk about guns.
This guy's channel is great. It's very informative.
I've learned that it's become strangely important to give your credentials before anyone takes you seriously regarding this issue. It's a lot like gaming. This is the new having your rig specs down in your forum signature. So firstly, I am a political moderate. Look, even Facebook, which knows all of my secrets, labeled me as one. As a result, I've been called both a libtard and a Nazi. Sometimes in the same video. Being in the middle is a lot of fun, trust me. So my goal with this video is not to sway you one direction or another. What I hope to accomplish is to serve as somewhat of a bridge between the two sides. I want you to understand where we were, where we are, and where some people want us to go, and at least be able to use the same vocabulary moving forward. So I am going to talk about some of the proposals for gun control in the future, and I know that just addressing them instead of dismissing them right out of hand must mean that I want to destroy America or something.
That is a very common misconception among people on the political right. It's not uncommon for them to consider anybody who mentions anything that would, try to mitigate the problem we have with kids getting shot up in schools means they somehow want to ban all guns or destroy America or whatever. And that's simply not the case.
I don't. In fact, the eagle-eyed among you probably noticed that Facebook also seems to know that I am a veteran. Here I am holding an M60. This is definitely my favorite picture. I look like a total bamf. I was in the Army for 7 years. Yes, 7. I was stop-loss during my deployment. Thanks, Obama. My first MOS was as a field artillery cannon crew member, which also means that I'm a crew-served weapons specialist. I've fired everything from the 155mm howitzer to the 9mm pistol to the Mark 19 automatic grenade launcher. Yes, that is a real thing, and yes, it's just as ridiculous as you imagine. Later I changed over to the Signal Corps, but then I was deployed. I was in Iraq from 2009 to 2010 as a convoy security gunner, running back and forth between Nasiriyah, Iraq and the Kuwaiti border, where this picture was taken. Yes, I'm well aware of the fact that that's not an M60, it's a 240 Bravo. So if you see any comments down below about how that's not an M60 and I have no idea what I'm talking about, it means they barely made it past the first minute.
I love how he put that in there just to catch the people who would be dicks about it off guard and see who would do that. And if you actually scroll down and sort the comments on this video for the newest, you'll see that even recent comments include a lot of stuff where people go, "That's not an M60, asshole," including or indicating that these people literally did exactly what he set the trap for, which is watch for anything they could be nitpicky about and then, lock onto it and be assholes about it. Even though he, pointed out less than a minute and a half later, that he knew that and it was a trap.
It's a trap!
So where does your right to own a gun come from?
And the policies that you're proposing, which by the way strip other people of their fundamental human rights.
Fundamental human right?
You keep using the word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
A fundamental human right is something that explicitly isn't written, like the right to privacy or the right to have a name. If it's written down as part of a law somewhere, it's not a fundamental human right. Now, I know what he's stretching that to mean, the right to self-defense and self-preservation. And he is kind of right when it comes to that, but there is no guarantee of what tools can be used. That part has to be written. Even the right to not be owned by another person had to be written down. That's how vague and abstract fundamental human rights are. But in the gun debate, many people will assert that it's a God-given right. Now, I've read this book once or twice, and I've even skimmed through other translations of the same book, Guns and firearms are never mentioned. I am allowed to own people in these though, so that's interesting. I've even read the sequel, which was written well after guns were invented, and they're not in here either, so maybe I'm missing something. God is never mentioned in the Constitution either. Your creator is in the Declaration of Independence, but that's not law. It was written over a decade before the Constitution. And you are only endowed by your creator with 3 inalienable rights: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What's interesting about that last one is that in the original draft, it was the pursuit of property, so it's a little strange that God-given rights are up to human revision. But that's not the point. I'm not trying to bash religion or anything. Your right to own a gun comes from the government.
No, I'll do all the religion bashing people could want if they ask for it. So.
Not some supreme being or some inherent humanness, but the Constitution, specifically the Second Amendment.
A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, shall not be infringed.
Now here's where I'm going to start losing some people. As if I didn't already. The Second Amendment is not some in case of tyranny break glass clause in the Constitution. That whole in the course of human events it becomes necessary to dissolve blah blah comes from the Declaration of Independence, which again is not law. It's not for the security of the people from a free state, it's for the security of a free state. But from who? From foreign invaders, Native Americans, and yes, even the federal government. When the Constitution was adopted in 1789, the United States didn't at all look like the United States of today. And I don't just mean geographically. It was more like the European Union, a collection of states loosely banded together mostly for economic benefit. People didn't really identify as American yet. They were Virginian or Pennsylvanian. The standing federal US Army was very small, so the majority of military power came from state militias. And the Second Amendment guaranteed the right of the states to form those state militias. It was not an individual right to own guns.
And that's a fact that gun rights advocates always seem to want to ignore. Like, always, always, always. And for most of the history of the United States, that's exactly how the Constitution was interpreted by every court in the country, right up to the Supreme Court, that it had nothing to do with the personal right to own a gun. That's actually a very recent change that happened, I believe, in like 1970 or so.
None of the Founding Fathers, whether it be during the Constitutional Convention or in the Federalist Papers, ever talked about individual gun ownership. It was always in reference to state militias, which, by the way, aren't really a thing anymore. They do exist in, like, Texas, because of course they do in Texas, but they aren't the National Guard. I was in the National Guard. You swear to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States and the state, which would kind of put you at odds during a civil war.
So many vows. They make you swear and swear.
Speaking of the Civil War, while there were federally organized US troops, most of the forces were state units or militias, like the 54th Massachusetts. It wasn't until after the Civil War that people really started to identify themselves as American, which brings us to the first Supreme Court case that I want to talk about. Presser v. Illinois. Presser was part of a local workers' militia not assembled by any government, and the state weirdly didn't allow that. The court's decision was that the Second Amendment did not apply to the individual except as part of a government militia for the good of the United States. So basically, they kind of rewrote the amendment from this to this. Which wasn't that much of a change. We were now a united country after all. It's important to note that at this point the only practical firearms that existed were muzzle-loaded rifles, pistols, and shotguns. Lever action and repeating rifles were still fairly new, and the only machine gun in existence still needed to be carted around by a horse. The Founding Fathers were smart, but they couldn't see into the future. They didn't even know what was on the other side of the Mississippi, which is why several ways to change the Constitution were built into it, like amendments. But more often, Supreme Court cases change the interpretation rather than the actual language, as we've just seen. So as new weapons came out, the government had to figure out how to handle them. In 1934, the first real gun control law was passed, the National Firearms Act. This law mandated a special tax stamp and registry of all sorts of weapons, like machine guns, short-barreled rifles and shotguns, anything larger than a .50 caliber, explosives, and even poison gas. Things I hope we can all agree shouldn't be in the hands of civilians. But this is what also allows people on the Discovery Channel to get their hands on them. It's not impossible, it's just very difficult. 5 years after the law, we have our next Supreme Court case, U.S. v. Miller. Miller was in possession of a sawed-off shotgun and argued that the Second Amendment allowed him to do so. The Supreme Court disagreed, saying that it had no military utility. In fact, its only real purpose was to hide under your coat so that you could shoot people.
Funny that. Anybody have any reaction to this other than me? Because I find this absolutely fascinating.
They decided that the Second Amendment only applies to ordinary military equipment that could be used as part of a well-regulated militia. So basically only pistols, rifles, and long-barreled shotguns, reaffirming the constitutionality of the NFA. Then basically nothing happened until the Gun Control Act of 1968, which mostly regulated interstate commerce when it comes to guns. If you want to sell or transfer firearms across state lines, you have to have a federal firearms license, or FFL.
By the way, when you see which court case actually started us down the road to this drowning in guns that we have in the United States today, it's going to blow your mind when you realize what the subject matter of it actually was.
This basically means any store, since you likely get the majority of your stock from other states. Individuals can sell to other individuals without a license as long as it's within their own state. Do you see a problem with this yet? We're gonna jump ahead to 1993 when the Brady Bill was passed, which created a whole new list of criteria that would disqualify someone from owning a gun. This is the list which is currently enforced, which prohibits felons, fugitives, illegal aliens, and dishonorably discharged veterans from owning guns. How can the government possibly enforce these rules? By requiring every federally licensed gun retailer to run a background check on potential buyers. So if I want to buy a gun from a store, they have an FFL, so there's a background check. But if I want to buy a gun from a private individual, say at a gun show, no license, no background check. This is the gun show loophole, the thing that many people think should be closed, including this guy actually.
I believe in background checks. At gun shows or anywhere to make sure that guns don't get in the hands of people that shouldn't have them.
Wah, 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 wah. Take that, right-wingers who insist that no right-winger ever says that, that we should close the gun control or the gun show loophole.
In 1986, Ronald Reagan passed the Firearm Owners Protection Act, also known as the machine gun ban. A few years later, in 1989, someone walked onto an elementary school playground in Stockton, California with a legally purchased AK-47 and killed several children and injured several dozen others. In response to this, only 3 weeks later, Ronald Reagan said,
"And I do not believe in taking away the right of the citizen to own guns for sporting, for hunting and so forth, or for home defense. But I do believe that an AK-47, a machine gun, is not a sporting weapon."
Here's
Wah, 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 wah. And that came out of Reagan's mouth.
the problem though. That shooting wasn't perpetrated with a machine gun. Reagan seems to have fallen victim to the same thing gun rights advocates chastise the left for. A lack of understanding of the vocabulary. So let's fix that now. The 1986 machine gun ban eliminated the sale and manufacture of new machine guns. If you own one prior to 1986,
Yeah, Vistro, what a
could
shock,
keep it.
right?
You could even sell it to someone else under the National Firearms Act. It requires months of paperwork and costs a fortune though. A pre-ban machine gun can cost you $20,000 or more. So I suppose the question of the hour is, what is a machine gun? Any weapon that when you pull and hold the trigger fires more than one bullet. Also known as an automatic rifle, or more popularly an assault rifle. Yes, assault rifles are already banned, but the AK-47 used in that shooting was a semi-automatic. Pull the trigger, one bullet. Pull the trigger, one bullet. So in 1994, Reagan, along with former presidents Ford and Carter, wrote a joint letter to Congress saying,
"We are writing to urge your support for a ban on the domestic manufacture of military-style assault weapons. Every major law enforcement organization in America and dozens of leading labor, medical, religious, civil rights, and civic groups support such a ban. Most importantly, poll after poll shows that the American public overwhelmingly supports a ban on assault weapons. We urge you to listen to the American public and to the law enforcement community and support a ban on the further manufacture of these weapons."
And again, Reagan on board with that.
Congress and President Clinton listened, which led to the assault weapons ban in 1994. So what is an assault weapon? To answer that, we need to look at the AR-15. Just to get a few things out of the
never.
way,
They will never pull their heads
the
out of their
original
asses.
patent-holding name brand was the Colt Armalite AR-15. The AR stands for Armalite rifle, so Rather redundantly, the entire name of the original rifle is the Colt Armalite Rifle 15. The patent expired, so now everyone has their own versions of the AR-15, but they're all basically the same, so I'm going to refer to all of them collectively as the AR-15. Is the AR-15 an assault rifle? No, it was prior to 1986, but since then they've all been semi-automatic. Is the AR-15 an assault weapon? That's when things get a little tricky. An assault weapon is a semi-automatic rifle with 2 or more of the following. A pistol grip. Yes, all AR-15s have that. So as long as it didn't have any more, it was completely legal. A folding or telescoping stock, a grenade launcher, well, nobody can own grenades anyway, so a bayonet mount? Why would... Okay, next. A flash suppressor, or a barrel capable of supporting one, which is not a silencer, it's this bit, which is a pretty important piece for not blinding the shooter and, depending on the design, reduces recoil. So the AR-15 was legal during the assault weapons ban as long as it was modified to not have certain features.
Exactly, Vistra.
So a fully automatic machine gun is an assault rifle. A semi-automatic rifle with a pistol grip and a flash suppressor is an assault weapon, but get rid of just one of those and it's not. It's a modern sporting rifle. But all of these fall under the umbrella term assault-style rifles. So when stores like Dick's Sporting Goods decided they would no longer sell these, everyone knew what they meant. The ban also prohibited the transfer or possession of large-capacity ammunition feeding devices, which is anything that holds more than 10 rounds. Pay attention because this is something that gamers do that annoys anyone who knows anything about guns. This is a clip, this is a magazine, this is a high-capacity magazine, this is a drum, and this is a juice box. Hey, I gotta future-proof these videos somehow. High-capacity magazines and drums were illegal until the assault weapons ban was lifted in 2004.
I made my intentions, my views clear. I did think we ought to extend the assault weapons ban, and was told the fact that the bill was never going to move.
Although it wasn't actually lifted, it had an expiration date built in, which is something I've never really liked. It's a way for Congress to blame the current administration for raising taxes or making something legal, when really it was Congress 10 years ago that did that, but that's beside the point. The AR-15 wasn't really popular until after the assault weapons ban was lifted, because now they could have all the fun cosmetic attachments they wanted, as long as it wasn't full auto.
Okay, I want to know something here. In this little clip, who's the poor schmuck holding the camera that this guy's firing at? And if it's just a camera mounted on like a tripod, how, oh god, would you feel fucking stupid if you destroyed your own fucking camera?
All the fun cosmetic
during
attachments
this, like,
they wanted,
automatic
as long as it
barrage.
wasn't full auto.
One bad bit of recoil and your camera is done, dude.
Again, being fully automatic means that when you pull and hold the trigger, it continuously fires multiple bullets until you let go of the trigger. That was a bump stock, which makes the trigger move back and forth so your stationary finger is pulling it every time.
So it's interesting that bump stocks became such a big deal, and were used so lethally in the Vegas shooting, because that's a piece of technology that people who play paintball games have been familiar with for years, because it was a way for you to get fully automatic rates of fire out of your paintball gun without having to have a fully automatic paintball gun, right? You know, I actually bought one of those for a friend of mine for a paintball gun back in the day. I bought a paintball gun, and it came with that attachment built in, and I hadn't even known it. He got it for free. I hadn't ordered it intentionally. But he used to enjoy it like hell at the range, you know, at the what do you call it, the paintball field, not far from Manchester, New Hampshire, where we used to play. And it gave him a hell of an advantage over people that had to semi-auto their way through the matches.
Making it technically not automatic and therefore technically legal. But your firing rate is like 90% that of full auto, so close enough. After the Vegas shooting, many people mistakenly thought that the shooter had illegally modified his weapons to be fully automatic. He didn't. He used a bump stock. How difficult is it to modify your weapons to be full auto anyway? Turns out, not that difficult. There are a number of videos on YouTube showing you how to do it. But you don't really have to, because there are a number of legal increased rate of fire devices on the market, like bump stocks, that get you close enough. As of the recording of this video, bump stocks are still legal, but are in the process of becoming illegal. Unlike the grandfather clause of the machine gun ban, if they are made illegal, you would have to surrender or destroy any existing bump stocks. So there we go, all of the vocabulary should be cleared up. I hope. In 2008, the Supreme Court heard D.C. v. Heller, the first Second Amendment case since before World War II. I won't get into the particulars of this case since Mr. Beat already did that. But in short, Heller sued the city for the ability to keep a gun in his home, which was illegal at the time. The Supreme Court agreed with Heller, and for the first time ever, affirmed the individual right to keep and bear arms regardless of military service.
So I want you to keep in mind that 2008, you have from basically 1780 to 1880 to 1980 is 200 years, to 1990 to the O's, and then to almost 2010. So for about 230 years of this country's existence, out of like the just shy of 240 that we've, or so that we got now in that area, there was no legally acknowledged right for the individual to own a gun. At all. At all. And yes, the stacked SCOTUS reversed it. But it's mind-boggling to me that you talk to any gun rights person and they seem completely unaware that we've had less than 12 years in this nation where you actually, according to SCOTUS, had a personal right to own a gun. Yeah, and it's always frustrating because right-wingers insist that the left is the one that commits election fraud, and there's literally no evidence that that's the case, but there's mountains of evidence that the right wing engages in vote fraud and voter suppression all over the place.
They effectively changed the interpretation of the Second Amendment from this to just this by saying that anyone can technically be part of the militia, which is also why a certain influential gun lobby only has that part posted in their headquarters lobby. In 2016, they heard Caetano v. Massachusetts, which extended the Second Amendment to all weapons regardless of military utility, unless otherwise made illegal.
And just so you know, the thing that's going to blow your mind about the Heller case is that that was actually a case where not only did the guy want to store the gun in his home, but he wanted to store it unsafely in his home. So the case that set the precedent that individual gun ownership was what the Second Amendment referred to after like 230 years of this country existing was literally about a guy who did not want to have to store a gun safely when he had it in his house. He was literally suing to be able to store a gun unsafely. Yeah, Vistro's pretty much nailed it on the head.
So stun guns okay, machine guns and rocket launchers not okay. So that's where we are now.
Hey, Copter, welcome.
It doesn't really matter what the original intent of the Founding Fathers was. What matters is how it's interpreted today. There was no guaranteed individual right to own guns under the Founding Fathers. There is today. There were no machine guns or even semi-automatics when the Founding Fathers were around. There are today. As I've tried to make abundantly clear, the framers of the Constitution were intelligent and forward-thinking, but the United States was a completely different place 230 years ago. That was a time when you were basically born, lived, and died in the same town. They didn't even have railroads yet, so they couldn't even imagine sitting in a metal tube and essentially teleporting from one side of the country to the other and back again all within the same day. State laws were far more important and effective back then. They aren't so much today. So using California's state gun control as an example of why gun control doesn't work is ridiculous. State borders look like this, not like this. And don't even talk to me about cities like Chicago. You accidentally walk across city limits all the time without even realizing it. California does have fairly strict gun control, but some people want to see it expanded nationally, or perhaps look something more like what Australia has. So let's clear up what Australia...
What semi-automatic weapons did they have in 1780? Because back then it was muskets, dude. I'm not sure what you think a semi-automatic would have been then, but if there is something, show us a link.
Actually has. After the 1996 Port Arthur massacre, they enacted sweeping gun control that essentially eliminated mass shootings. But it didn't eliminate all gun violence. Because there are still guns in Australia, they didn't completely ban them. Here's what they actually did. Completely ban all automatic and military-style weapons. Just like we did for machine guns and temporarily for assault weapons. With the addition of having to sell back any currently owned ones. Set up a national registry for all firearms. Restrict interstate purchase and transfer to licensed dealers, just like we do, require secure storage of all firearms, and require anyone seeking to own a firearm to obtain a license. Who can get a license? They basically have the same restrictions that we do under the Brady Bill, with the additional requirement of being mentally sound. You also have to have a genuine reason for wanting to possess a firearm. Hunting and even target shooting at a gun club count. You just can't have one to hang on your wall, I guess. You also have to demonstrate appropriate training in the safe use of firearms.
Which is something we don't have to do, as far as I'm aware. I don't know of any place in the United States that requires that. There might be, but there certainly isn't a requirement in the state that I live in. I don't know if it's a requirement in any of your states. But this would be a nice change where you have to demonstrate training and safe use of firearms.
Kinda like what we do with driver's licenses. That's it, it wasn't a complete ban. Plenty of people still own rifles, pistols, and shotguns. Nobody in the United States is talking about a complete ban. Okay, very few people are actually talking about that. By the way, repealing the Second Amendment is not unconstitutional. You would have to pass an amendment to repeal that amendment, which is something we've totally done before.
Please drink responsibly.
It's a long, complicated process outlined in the Constitution. It's just about the most constitutional thing you can do. It's not impossible, but it's incredibly unlikely. So let's talk about some of the reforms people are seriously suggesting.
Vistro, correct.
Again, I am not pushing for any of these ideas, but I am going to talk about them. Some of them I agree with, some of them I don't. Australian-style gun control is probably the most extreme. It would expand on laws we already have, reinstate the assault weapons ban, and ban semi-automatic rifles for many people. The Supreme Court has already decided that machine guns and sawed-off shotguns are not civilian weapons, so some people would like to see the AR-15 and other semi-automatic rifles treated the same way. But the biggest change would be making guns look more like cars. You have to have a license to drive a car, and in the process of getting a license,
specifics of New
you have to
Zealand gun
demonstrate
control
the ability to drive and have basic knowledge of traffic laws. Having a gun license could also take the place of needing a background check every time you buy a gun. Some people suggest having a title attached to every firearm, much like there is with your car. This could also create a national firearms registry, much like in Australia. But more importantly, this is the only way to close the gun show loophole while still allowing private sales.
Which is the main reason I agree with that idea. I think that if you own a gun and you want to sell it to another person, that should probably be legal so long as it is not used as a way to secretly transfer guns from one person to another. And he's right. If you want to allow private sales, you have to have some type of way like that to, manage record keeping of private gun sales.
Any other method would just be nibbling around the edges and you'd be playing whack-a-mole with loopholes for the next decade. As it is right now, you only need a background check if you buy from a store with a federal firearms license. Buying from a person at a gun show or anywhere else doesn't require anything. So a title transfer where you have to go to the courthouse just like you do for your car would serve the purpose of making sure you have a license and a background check, and could serve the additional purpose of acting as a waiting period. Some states have mandatory waiting periods, but not all of them, and even if they do, it's only when purchasing from a dealer with an FFL, not private sales. Mandatory waiting periods mostly serve the purpose of stopping you from making an impulsive, rash decision. Many of the recent high-profile mass shootings were perpetrated by someone who bought the weapon only a few days earlier specifically for that purpose. But mostly it would stop suicide, and yes, states with mandatory waiting periods have lower rates of suicide. Mandatory waiting periods.
What a shock, huh? States with mandatory waiting periods for gun purchases have lower rates of suicide? I'm stunned. I could never have guessed that might be the way things went. What a completely unexpected fact.
periods won't stop all mass shootings or even gun violence as a whole. In fact, no single solution will stop all gun violence. Even during the federal assault weapons ban, while there was a reduction in mass shootings, there were still mass shootings. Because of recent events, people have become very serious about having a conversation about gun control, and gun owners are gonna have to be part of that conversation. Simply shutting it down by saying that it's a God-given right or that any gun control leads to tyranny isn't gonna cut it anymore. As I've shown you, we already have quite a bit of gun control. Australia has just a little bit more, and they're not living under a tyrannical government. Likewise, the common talking point that gun control led to the Holocaust is just as ridiculous.
So, but just clarify, if there had been no gun control laws in Europe at that time, would 6 million Jews have been slaughtered?
I think the likelihood of Hitler being able to accomplish his goals would have been greatly diminished if the people had been armed.
Oh my god, dude. I get so sick and tired of that bullshit.
I'm not even going to address this because 3 Arrows, an actual German person talking about actual Nazi gun control, already did. Go check that out if you have the time. There are other talking points and common sayings that gun owners use to stop the conversation though, like,
Guns don't kill people, people kill people.
Which, yeah, but guns are specifically designed for killing, whether you're talking about animals or people. Knives and cars have other primary purposes. It's the gun that makes it so easy.
An armed society is a polite society.
I don't really want to live in a society where people are nice to each other only because they're afraid of getting shot.
It's not a gun problem, it's a mental health problem.
As if the United States is the only country in the world with mental health issues. We are the only country in the world with more guns than actual people though, so maybe it doesn't.
Yeah, more guns than people. Yikes. Look up the pickle gun and the Goycott chain pistol. Okay, so those things I'm sure are going to turn out to match with what you said, but that does not mean that, generally speaking, that there were semi-automatic, weapons and machine guns. Those were the exceptions that prove the rule. So, Vistro, what is it you want to see in that? Because that looks like it's going to be a hell of a long document. We'll take a look at it in a little bit, but tell me what you're trying to find specifically in there to help speed that up.
Matter. All of these are just ways to stop the conversation about gun control by shifting it to something else. You're gonna have to participate in the conversation eventually.
Okay.
When one kid eats a Tide Pod, we lock up all the Tide Pods. When one person tries to sneak a bomb onto a plane in their shoe, we all have to take off our shoes. Forever. So when thousands of people are being killed by the same product every year, it's not hard to understand why some people think it's time we do something about it.
Thank you. Is there anybody here who does not understand the reasoning behind what he just said? Is there anybody who doesn't understand that?
Simply dismissing the conversation or ignoring someone because they use the wrong terminology will either result in extreme legislation or just more of the same, neither of which will be helpful to anyone. At least now you'll be able to approach the conversation with a greater depth of knowledge, and the next time someone says, "We need to ban all assault rifles," or "You might as well just burn the Constitution," hopefully now you'll know better. So what do you think about this issue? As if you weren't already going to tell me.
Knowing
what
better
topic
is
should I
just
moderately
such a
explain
great
next?
channel.
Let me know.
Let's see. Let's sort by newest first. Conspiracy theories. The gun control laws do not work argument. That's always popular among the crazies. Notice no citation from this guy. And Democratic is no good. Hello. We were just watching a video from a channel called Knowing Better that goes over the history of the Second Amendment, the court cases that modified it, what the rights looked like before and after Heller versus D.C. It's a very interesting video, and I recommend it highly if you want to watch it yourself, because I'm not going to play it again since we literally just finished watching it. There's a link to it. It's fascinating and it's very neutral, which I happen to think is a real nice thing to have when you're talking about such a hot-button topic. Laws are clearly just suggestions. I mean, the fact that, you can break them sort of means that at least to some level they are. We're supposed to, to follow them, but it can't be ensured entirely, otherwise there'd be no such thing as crime. Well, that was more for the Democratic is no good person, who was just asking what we were talking about. You had a run-in with the law today? What happened, Nietzsche? Well, I meant crime in general, but, there's crime at all levels, from governance down to the individual, And just so you know, Democratic, what we usually do here is we go over a news roundup every time I stream with the Associated Press's article listed on their main page, just to kind of see what's happening in the nation. And then we talk about whatever specific topics are interesting at that point. You got pulled over for speeding in my Bernie mobile, then found out I forgot to renew my registration. What exactly is a Bernie mobile? Oh, Copter, you're just trying to pull my chain on that one. Also, hopefully the GOP collapses into itself. Yeah, I don't think we're going to be that lucky. Yeah, I've been here, I'm a chud. Okay? Alright, well, I mean, as long as you're willing to participate civilly and, in good faith, you can talk. Bernie bumper stickers on it, gotcha. I would love to put bumper stickers on my car, but I'm concerned in this day and age that since I'm mostly left-leaning and the bumper stickers would reflect that I would have to worry about right-wing assholes keying my car because they can't deal with anybody disagreeing with them and will... Well, I mean, Democratic, again, if you're going to be here in good faith, then you can stay, and as usual, if you're not, you'll just get banned again. And that's okay. It doesn't take any energy to ban you. It's just one click, so you do you. Yes, you always call him Bernie Sanders, Copter, and I wonder why that is. Like, is that some kind of joke that I missed? Let me know. You say ew Bernie, Democratic, so let us know why you say that Bernie is ew. Well, that's what happens when you overuse your power tools, Vistra. More stickers, yeah. Like I say, I don't want my car getting keyed because some right-wing asshat couldn't deal with it. If I did, I have long since forgotten it. I'm old. Now you're making me want to look this up, though. Hold on. Oh, okay. The thing where the bird landed on him? I remember that now.
Hello, I'm Patrick.
Hey, Patrick, how you doing?
Did you know that right now...
that if he or she does their schoolwork seriously, does well, takes school. What? Now you see, this little bird doesn't know it. Oh my.
That is one brave bird, man. Well, first of all, let me say his policies are terrible, okay? You need to justify that. You think the man himself really, truly cares about everyone, which I like about him. I agree that he seems to really care about people. He's been getting arrested defending other people, you know, at the beginning of his career, and he's never stopped fighting for the average citizen. But you say you think his policies are terrible. Explain why. Yeah, tickets are so expensive. Bernie the Bird Whisperer, yeah. Yeah, it's always easier to have an up-to-date set of paperwork for your car. You know, I don't understand why the tickets like that cost so much, but it's just easier on you to not be subject to that kind of fine. But registration costs a lot too, particularly if you have a new car. So I guess you pay one way or the other, you know? How fast were you going? You rebel. His Medicare for All is bad because on page 8 of the bill it says it will force you on the government plan, taking 149 people off private insurance. That's the first thing. So that would only be bad if Medicare wasn't better than just about all the private insurance you can get in the United States. And it is better than all the private insurance you can get in the United States in at least several ways, one of which is you don't have any out-of-pocket cost at the time of service. You know, that there's no co-pays or deductibles or anything like that for Medicare, under the Medicare for All plan. So, you know, that's not really a viable objection to have to it. But, okay, so what else do you have an issue with? You said that's the first thing. What's the second thing? For the same reason that every other modern industrial nation does it, which is to benefit the nation as a whole. Well, I mean, not to put too fine a point on it, but too fucking bad. You know, it's a question of it doesn't matter which political party would implement it. A national health care plan would have to look about the same no matter what. So this is not about a Dem or Republican thing. This is, you know, like, even if a Republican implemented a program like this, it would still have the same basic characteristics. And I hate to break it to you folks on the right wing, but it's not about you. It's about benefiting society as a whole. And honestly, since the insurance is very likely to be substantially better than anything that you've ever had in your life, you should want somebody else to make you get on it. Another crappy Obamacare. Okay, Obamacare is not national health care, and it is not single-payer Medicare for all. What Obamacare is Mitt Romney's plan recycled because the Republicans at the time were a bunch of assholes who would not actually let a genuine national health care plan pass, leaving Obama with no other option but to try to find something to get people insured who were not, that Republicans would find palatable. So he patterned the Affordable Care Act after Mitt Romney's plan in Massachusetts. So if you hate Obamacare, if you hate the Affordable Care Act, what you actually hate is Mitt Romney. So you can stop blaming that as being a Democrat thing either. Because that's all Romney's plan, just writ large. because other Republicans would not let a better plan be implemented. Only because the person implementing it was a black guy who happened to be a Democrat. That was the entire reason they objected to it. So the stuff you're saying here is bad about Bernie Sanders' programs holds zero weight. So let's have another idea about why you think Sanders' plan or platform is bad, because the stuff you've mentioned so far doesn't have any particular validity to it. It's not based in reality. It's just right-wing dogma being repeated. Vistro, I happen to think they're not the same. I think they're actually worse now than they were under Obama. Got a text message from the state of Connecticut. 911 is down for landlines and VoIP. Yeah, all over the Northeast, there are massive outages in telephony. People all over the town I live in are unable to dial on any kind of landline at all. Okay, I'm going to repeat this again, Democratic. If the new plan benefits society as a whole and generally is a vast improvement over the private insurance, yes, absolutely yes, and there is zero weight to you saying otherwise. If it were worse, you might actually have a case, but it's not, so you don't. So try something else, because that doesn't hold weight, and if you keep hammering it, you're going to earn a timeout for continuing to beat a dead horse. People are literally dying because they cannot afford health care. It's a question of benefiting society. Correct, but it's also a matter of the insurance that would be available under a Medicare for All plan would be comprehensive, where most private insurance is not. Like, I think Medicare for All who choose is good with the idea Pete Buttigieg implants. Again, no. Because it still allows a for-profit healthcare industry to exist. Profit motive and healthcare are always going to be in an opposition state. It is never beneficial to have healthcare provided by for-profit institutions. Ever. Because it always means the profit motive is going to be working against the impetus to provide good and comprehensive healthcare for everybody. But how do you know it will be better? Because the plans have been written. Because we know what Medicare looks like and what modifications to it are being discussed. Because the information is available. And since I just told you you're going to be getting a timeout for beating a dead horse, you just get a 10-minute timeout. As you pointed out earlier, I think I know which user you are, and you've been banned a bunch of times. I am not going to allow you to continue dragging the conversation off into fantasy land where, you think Ayn Rand is smart and Republican thinking is good and for-profit healthcare is somehow a positive thing. And when the holes in that are pointed out, you keep repeating the same stuff. We're not going to do that. And every time you try it, you're going to get another timeout. And I have warned you, and you did it again, so you did that to yourself. I'm waiting for you to show up under another username, because that's typically your thing as you keep creating new accounts. So let's see. Boop. There you go. So we're now in followers only mode, because I don't want that guy just deciding he's going to keep creating new accounts all the time. Because, if he has nothing better to do with his life than, act like a jerk here, then that's pretty pathetic for him, and I kind of pity him, but it's not going to be what controls how this channel operates. Nietzsche asks what's better about his insurance plan, and thank you, I'm having a good debate. You will be able to talk in 10 minutes, since it's obviously the same user coming back under a new username. You get to wait 10 minutes before you can talk, and if you decide to be a chud again, you'll get another timeout, and you can keep creating usernames all night long. Yeah, we knew that was coming. I mean, it's fine with me. It just keeps bumping up my follower numbers and such, so that's all good. You know, keep at it, dude. Exactly. What does it matter if everything's covered under single payer? I don't understand. I have what would be considered top-tier health insurance and dental, but what does it matter if everything's covered? Yes. I figured I'd repeat if they were looking now. Yeah. They're probably looking now, but don't count on them paying attention any further than they did the first time. So let's see. Let's see if we can't get some other right-wing people to show up here. What do you like? Actually... let's do this, Bunk. Maybe that'll get somebody's attention. You know, it's funny. I have never had to put something out here that's aimed at poking at the sensitivities of the left wing to get people to show up here. But right-wingers seem to respond most when you say something where they get to come running in screaming their heads off. Trump is guilty. Yeah, I agree with you. But is that what you're suggesting should be the stream title? Because that's probably a good one. Okay, hold on. Let's change it to that. Let's see how that does. Well, you know, I do want right-wing folks to come here and talk, but it's like pulling teeth. To, you know, if you put a title of anything sensible, they don't show up. You know, you talk about something that's interesting but not hot-buttonish, and they don't care. Yeah, I know. What a surprise. I'm always, like, stunned looking at what the Senate Republicans are trying to get away with, as if people don't understand that they're trying to get away with fixing the trial, with, like, rigging it. You know, like I said earlier, what exactly is a trial if not for the entering of evidence and witness testimony into the record and having it affect, you know, the decisions of the jury? You know, like, why else would you have a trial? And yet the Republicans act like that's not how a trial operates. Yeah, exactly. Susan Collins needs to just get abducted by aliens and, like, carted off to another fucking galaxy for the good of the world. You know? Like, I wish you a pleasant alien abduction, Susan Collins. You know? May your probing be, you know, calm and, you know, and comfortable. So, Susan Collins is a very odd person. You know, I have to wonder if that one guy is ever going to come back here now that you have put the 10-minute follower only on. She's going to get the boot in 2020. Yeah, I hope so, honestly, because she is just awful. She really is. To me, it's literally mind-boggling how she manages to actually tie her own fucking shoes. You know? Just bonkers. So, yeah. It seems to me, by the way, that the Democratic National Committee is trying to ramrod Biden down our throats as the candidate, making exactly the same mistake they did in 2016. So, let's take a look.
I learned a lot. And I learned that...
I want you to pay attention to this and try to understand exactly how bonkers this guy has to be for this to be a story he would tell at the podium.
I learned a lot. And I learned that it makes a difference. This was the diving board area. and I was one of the guards, and they weren't allowed to. There was a 3-meter board, and if you fell off sideways, you landed on the darn cement over there. And Corn Pop was a bad dude, and he ran a bunch of bad boys.
No, it's not.
And I did. Yeah, and back
Nietzsche.
in those days, to show how things have changed.
There is nothing about putting, a banner up on your stream that's against TOS, unless you say something like racist or criminal. Other than that, no problem. Incoming Biden dementia clip, yes.
One of the things you had to use, if you used pomade in your hair, you had to wear a bathing cap. And so he was up on the board, wouldn't listen to me. I said, "Hey, Esther, you, off the board, or I'll come up and drag you off." Well, he came off, and he said, "I'll meet you outside." My car, these were all public housing behind it.
What
My
is
car, there was a gate out
WWG,
here.
whatever
I
that
parked
is?
my car outside the gate. And he said, "I'll be waiting for you." He was waiting for 3 guys in straight razors. Not a joke. There was a guy named Bill Wright, Mouse, the only white guy, and he did all the pools. He was the mechanic. And I said, "What am I going to do?" He said, "Come down here in the basement where mechanics, where all the pool filter is."
Where all the pool filter is. If it's criminal, then why hasn't Trump's channel been banned? For the same reason they don't ban any politician. And by the way, there's nothing creepy about some old mechanic guy inviting a young man into the dark basement. Dun, dun, dun.
Where all the pool filter is. You know the chain the filter is. You know the chain where all the pool filter is. Where mechanics, where all the pool filter is. You know the chain, there used to be a chain that went across the deep end.
Nope, what, Vistro?
And he cut off a 6-foot length of chain. He folded up, he said, "You walk out with that chain. And you walk to the car and say, 'You may cut me, man, but I'm going to wrap this chain around your head.'" I said, "You kidding me?" He said, "No, if you don't come back." And he was right. So I walked out with the chain. And I walked up to my car. And they had, in those days, you used to remember the straight razor. You'd bang them on the curb, get them rusty, put them in a rain barrel, get them rusty. And I looked at him.
So, I feel I have to stop and ask a question at this point. Does Biden actually expect people to believe that gang members would go out and purchase straight razors and leave them sitting around in a rain barrel to rust so they could use them as weapons? Because a rusty, blunt straight razor is much more useful in a fight than an actual sharp one? Like, is that what he's saying? And secondly, I want you to understand that this is a candidate for the presidency of the United States humble bragging about gang violence.
But I was smart then. I said, first of all, I said, when I tell you get off the board, you get off the board, and I'll kick you out again, but I shouldn't have called you Esther Williams. I apologize for that. I apologize, but I didn't know that apology was going to work. He said, "You apologize to me?" I said, "I apologize for that, not for throwing you out, but I apologize for what I said." He said, "Okay," he closed the straight razor, and my heart began to beat again.
Wow. What the hell? Whew. Yeah, and this is the guy the DNC is trying to force on the political left as the candidate. And I can't imagine how anybody thinks this guy has a snowball's chance in hell of running effectively against Donald Trump. Like none. None at all. He just can't do it. It's never going to happen. He will never defeat Trump. Never, ever, ever. Yeah. Where is this? I wish I could find it. There's a clip of Sanders talking to a bunch of school children. Oh, this might be it. Okay, here we go. This is a good one. Remember, this is the guy that Warren and the DNC want you to believe said that a woman could never be president.
The real issue is not whether you're black or white, whether you're a woman or a man. In my view, a woman could be elected president of the United States. A woman or a man, in my view, a woman could be elected president of the United States. A woman or a man, in my view, a woman could be elected president of the United States. Or a man, in my view, a woman could be
I'm just repeating that. I want everybody to hear it.
The real issue is, whose side are you on? Are you on the side of workers and poor people, or are you on the side of big money and the corporations?
Thanks, Bernie. Thank you. Fuck yeah. Stand up for the people, Bernie. I know, right? What a shock. What an absolute fucking shock. Where is it? That's not the one.
Next time you do this, you could be doing this.
So this is a woman named June who has 2 channels, Shoe on Head and Brainlet. When am I running for New Hampshire governor? Never.
How?
In 2016, WikiLeaks exposed how the media and the Democrats were working together behind the scenes to smear Bernie Sanders in order to make sure Hillary Clinton got the nomination. And I regret to inform you, they may be at it again. Over the past few weeks, we have been watching Elizabeth Warren's campaign.
Well, I mean, a poorly trained chimpanzee would be better than Governor Sununu. Governor Sununu is just an asshat.
Over the past few weeks, we have been watching Elizabeth Warren's campaign crash and burn. The night we were practically on the verge of war with Iran, this is what Elizabeth was doing.
Early on, and I, for the first time in history, we're going to stand here and do double selfies, and everybody's...
Of course, the internet proceeded to dunk on her. That is until the fun police showed up. As they do. Cory Booker, who, exactly? Cory Booker tweeted this. Raise your hand if you know why people are trolling Elizabeth's dance moves and not my dad jokes. Yes, because we never make fun of Joe Biden's brain melting.
And to get hot, I got hairy legs that turn turn blonde in the sun. And the kids used to come up and reach in the pool and rub my leg down.
Or Pete Buttigieg's cringy campaign dance.
That bears another.
And to get hot, I got hairy legs that turn turn blonde in the sun.
Look at this
and
kid's
the
eyes.
Come up and reach in the pool and rub my leg down.
Or Pete Buttigieg's Joe Biden's brain.
She's like, get me out of here.
Get hot, I got hairy legs that turn turn blonde in the sun. And the kids used to come up and reach in the pool and rub my leg down.
Or Pete Buttigieg's cringy campaign dance. Mystery why he has no black support. Ever since Elizabeth Warren backtracked on Medicare for All, she's been steadily dropping in the polls. The media would love for you to believe this is because...
I'm sure there are a lot of people who are Biden supporters for, like, Obama nostalgia, or because they're older and feel like he's moderate and sort of seems like them as old moderates, but not a lot of young Biden supporters, let me tell you.
She's a woman, of course. The sexist double standard. And then in that article, it's like, so yes, Warren put out 2 very bad plans, and her slide in the polls tracks closely with those debacles, but... So I never really hated Elizabeth Warren. Bernie and Warren have been good friends for years, and every time Bernie was interviewed and asked about Elizabeth, he would say Elizabeth is his friend. They always had this kind of unspoken unity on stage. That all ended when Bernie started getting first place in the polls.
I was disappointed to hear that Bernie is sending his volunteers out to trash me?
So, what was it? What was the terrible
this is
used to trash?
This is Warren went nuts saying that Sanders' people trashed her, and you're going to be amazed at how idiotic characterizing it as that is when you see what the actual comment was, just so you know.
Warren. Bernie campaign slams Warren as candidate of the elite. The non-aggression pact between Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren is seriously fraying. Sanders' campaign has begun stealthily attacking Warren as a candidate of the upper crust who could not expand the Democratic base in a general election. According to talking points his campaign is using to sway voters and obtained by Politico. The script Politico was talking about was apparently posted on Bernie's campaign Slack channel, a place where all his volunteers communicate with each other. Someone who never posted there previously posted it, and then it was immediately deleted by the mods because it went against Bernie's campaign rules, which is, don't trash other candidates.
So, and I want you to see, like, how this mirrors what we see in this very chat. Somebody who never posted there before mysteriously shows up, posts something that can be used to say that Sanders attacked Warren, and, like, with no backing whatsoever, no idea who this person was, and then the mods, who are actually Sanders people, delete it because it's completely out of line with what they allow there, but you have this mystery person showing up out of the blue and posting just the right thing to give ammunition against Sanders.
And people in that Slack channel said that they never even saw that script. So what exactly did this terrible, awful script say about Warren? I like Elizabeth Warren. In fact, she's my second choice. But here's my concern about her. The people who support her are highly educated, more affluent people who are going to show up and vote Democrat no matter what. She's bringing no new bases to the Democratic Party. We need to turn out disaffected working-class voters if we're going to defeat Trump.
Oh, no! He called her support... then this is meant to be a script that people doing phone banking use. And if the worst they can say that Sanders ever said, and mind you, this is not an official Sanders script, and nobody in the Sanders organization has any idea who the person was that this came from. And the worst thing it says is that Warren tends to appeal to the affluent and educated segment, who are pretty much dedicated Democrats, but simply isn't all that inspiring to other demographics. That's the horrific thing? Give me a break.
First of all, where's the lie? And second of all, where's the attack? Not even 24 hours later, Warren decides to play victim and sends this email to all of her supporters. Are you ready for this? Last night, we got some disappointing news. Bernie Sanders' campaign is instructing volunteers to dismiss our broad-based, inclusive campaign by saying the people who support Elizabeth are highly educated, more affluent people. When I heard that description, I didn't recognize it. That doesn't describe me or many of the passionate volunteers and organizers I know.
Welcome back, having good debate. Let me know if you're ready to actually participate instead of doing the beat the dead horse thing.
This type of attack isn't about disagreeing on issues. It's about dismissing the potency of our grassroots movement. Let's be clear. As a party and as a country, we can't afford to repeat the factionalism of the 2016 primary.
Says somebody who is trying to divide the primary by making up stuff about other candidates.
To win in November, we need a nominee who can unite a broad coalition of Democrats.
In other words, Bernie.
Will excite every part of the Democratic Party and who inspires more people to join the fight. Okay, great endorsement of Bernie, Warren.
Yes.
Anyway, I love just like how she's like, they said our supporters were highly educated. That doesn't sound like them. I'll have you know my supporters are idiots. Absolute morons. If this is how upset and angry she gets over, like, literal facts, how the hell is she gonna defeat Trump? Here's how. She won't. So that didn't stick. Nobody really gave a fuck. So the Warren campaign was just like, alright, plan B. Then suddenly, not even 24 hours later, CNN crawls out of its cave like a goddamn goblin with this trash hit piece of an article. Bernie Sanders told Elizabeth Warren in private that a woman can't win. Sources say.
I'm not beating a dead horse. I'm having a discussion. No, you are repeating the same thing over and over and over and over again, and I'm not calling you a chud for having different views. I'm calling you a chud for beating a dead horse on views that have already been demonstrated to be inaccurate. So, when you start acting more in good faith, you will stop getting timed out. So I'm waiting to see what you're going to want to discuss next. But if you're going to continue returning to the same already, proven incorrect stances, then we're not going to have much to talk about.
Sources. Trust me, bro. The description of that meeting is based on the accounts of 4 people. 2 people Warren spoke with directly soon after the encounter, and 2 people familiar with the meeting. Directly soon. 2 people familiar with the meeting. Not one piece of evidence. Not a one. We are just making shit up now. There's no proof Bernie Sanders said that. There's no proof he would even say anything like that. In fact, we have proof of the literal opposite.
The real issue is not whether you're
Oh, there it
black or
is.
white,
The same
whether
clip we
you're a
looked at
woman
earlier.
Or a man. In my view, a woman could be elected president of the United States.
There are many women mayors, but not enough. And one of the very important things, and I hope that all the girls in this class understand, that you, just as much as the boys, have a right to become president. There's not been a woman president, although there was a woman who was giving thought to running for president this time, from Colorado, a woman named Representative Schroeder, gave some thought. So I hope that the girls will think that they have the right to be involved in politics quite as much as the boys do.
Not only that.
So we literally have like a 30-year history of Sanders encouraging women to get into politics and telling them that they too could become president, and yet somehow when Warren comes out and says, he told me a woman couldn't become president, somehow that's believable? Are you fucking kidding me?
But in 2015, Bernie himself encouraged Warren to run against Hillary. So how does this make sense, CNN? Make it make sense! Bernie, of course, denies this happened because it didn't. Warren came out with a statement like, it did. So who are we gonna believe? The man who has been consistent in his beliefs and politics for the past, 50 years? Or the woman who lied about being Native American for 99% of her life? Harvard University cites her as their first professor of color.
And this, by the way, is one of the reasons Warren has now become somebody who will never be able to beat Trump, because all he's going to have to do is keep hammering her with the Pocahontas jokes and talking about how she lied about her ethnic background, and she's going to look like a fucking idiot. So if she ends up getting the nomination, she's fucked, and America's fucked, and Trump gets 4 more years.
Sorry, I am just blinded by the white. Yeah, but yes, Elizabeth, I'm sure Bernie in private is just like, broads should stay in the kitchen. This all happened days before the last Democratic debate. The debate which is going to be held on CNN, which is the same outlet the smear was posted on. You think I'm being tinfoil about this? This is from 2016. Some of the emails released in the WikiLeaks hack show both CNN and Politico had articles pre-approved by the DNC prior to publication. In May 2016, CNN published an anti-Sanders op-ed by Maria Cardona, who had it pre-checked by the DNC. The Intercept reported in May 2016 that they obtained emails showing CNN published an anti-Sanders op-ed ghostwritten by a lobbyist under Atlanta Mayor Kasim Reed's name that they had received from a Clinton super PAC. Interesting. CNN and Politico, the 2 outlets that are involved in this as well. Just weird. Just weird! So the debate happens, and they literally stop the climate change portion of the debate to bring up this lame manufactured drama.
And this is the thing that basically took all the Bernie supporters and put them right back into the fuck you mode that everybody yelled about in 2016 when the DNC boned him, where they were reluctant to vote for Hillary even though she got the nomination because of how badly they tried to bone Sanders.
Sanders, I do want to be clear here. You're saying that you never told Senator Warren that a woman could not win the election.
That is correct.
So they just said, did you say this to Warren? He says no. And then they literally frame this as if he did in the next sentence out of their mouths. Well, I want you to see this again.
Clear here. You're saying that you never told Senator Warren that a woman could not win the election.
That is correct.
Senator Warren, what did you think when Senator Sanders told you a woman could not win the election?
What?
Bernie, did you say the thing? No. Elizabeth, how did you feel when Bernie said the thing? Hell world! They framed it as a fact.
Exactly.
Imagine having not only the nerve, but the audacity. I'm really happy that I didn't record my reaction to this debate because I would have been kicked off YouTube. I made the most inhumane sound. When this happened, Bernie supporters took to Twitter and got the hashtag #CNNIsTrash trending. And Trump supporters and Bernie supporters were just like,
Hey, look at us. Look at us. Huh? Who would have thought? Not me.
And then when the debates were over, Bernie went to shake Warren's hand. Because that's what you do after a debate is over. You shake hands with each other. And Warren refused to shake his hand.
We're live from the Democratic debate in Des Moines, Iowa. This was it, the last time Americans will hear the
Oh wait, I forgot I'm supposed to be mad at you. This happened 2 years ago, but I'm mad now. Seems real. Seems legit. I believe it. So, of course the mics were hot. Elizabeth knew the mics were hot. The audience wasn't even done clapping. So CNN, as planned, released the audio.
I think you called me a liar on national TV.
What?
I think you called me a liar on national TV.
Let's not do it right now. You want to have that discussion, we'll have that discussion. You called me. You told me. All right, let's not do it now.
I don't want to get in the middle of it. I just want to say hi, Bernie.
Yeah, good.
Just, casually walking to the center of the stage, loudly calling Bernie Sanders a liar as the camera follows me. This all seems very normal, very natural, and not planned at all. I love
Yeah, seriously, could that seem any more rehearsed? I mean, Jesus Christ. You can almost picture her practicing with cue cards before the debate.
Dyer here, by the way, in full fanboy mode.
I don't want to get in the middle of it. I just want to say hi, Bernie.
Yeah, good.
I just got a notification from the Bernie Sanders campaign. You can never be president. Women belong in the kitchen. Wow, nice. Elizabeth couldn't go after Bernie based on facts or based on policy. So she tries this underhanded, cowardly, false accusation of sexism, desperately trying to pander to the woke crowd. So how did Bernie Sanders supporters react to this? Snakes. Lots and lots of snakes.
This is so beautiful. The hashtag Warren is a snake trended pretty heavily that night, too.
But did you know posting snake emojis is sexist? Did you know calling Warren out for her lies is sexist? It's not a lie. It's her truth. This is just like sexual assault. And if you feel bad for Bernie, that's just himpathy. Himpathy. Himpathy.
This is shoe on
Throwing
head.
the most progressive candidate under the bus. The candidate who would by far be the best for women's rights, who has been fighting for women's rights for decades, for gay rights, for civil rights, literally arrested for protesting segregation. And you're really out here like, himpathy? I swear to God, Democrats have just cursed themselves with this stupid ID poll. The first female president is probably going to be a Republican. And all this shit is going to age really, really badly. Why do we treat female candidates with kid gloves? Why do we have to walk on eggshells around them? Why can't we criticize them and call them out for their lies? To me, having a woman running for president isn't a special thing, it's just a normal thing. It feels like that's how it should have been this whole time. If you want to normalize women running for president, you gotta start treating them like everybody else. This don't run against women, don't criticize the woman candidates, you're being sexist, blah blah blah. It's low-key benevolent sexism. And stop pretending like they'd automatically make better leaders than men.
Yeah, the media's been treating everybody as better than Bernie for a very long time. You know, it's interesting when she says, you know, that women should have been running for a long time. Justice Ginsburg on the Supreme Court was once asked, when will you be satisfied with the number of women on the Supreme Court? Like, how many women will there have to be on the Supreme Court for you to feel like, you know, there's no longer discrimination? And she said 9, right? Like, all of them. And the reporter was kind of stunned and said, you know, why 9? Isn't that kind of extreme? And she said back, without a moment's hesitation, there have been 9 men forever, and you never commented on that. You know, it's like, it should just be how it is. It shouldn't be exceptional. It should just be part of the process that women and people of color, whatever, are all equally able to have a reasonable chance at a candidacy for the White House based on their character and their platforms, not based on their demographic.
Just on the virtue of being women. Obama. Elizabeth Warren waiting for the perfect
here's one for you. For those who say that
women. Obama.
I just want you to know that that's something Obama actually said. You know, like, for those who say I never say anything negative about Obama, that's fucked up right there.
Elizabeth Warren waiting for the perfect opportunity to swoop in there and Tanya Harding Bernie. Just wha-bam, sexism. If this shit happened 2 years ago, they've obviously been sitting on it. Why is she all of a sudden pretending to be mad at him and hate him just before the prime... Oh.
Yep. There you go.
Oh yeah, it's all coming together.
Anyway, so that was that video. Hope you
It's all
guys
coming
enjoyed
together.
it. If you like me screaming about politics and stuff like that, definitely check out my Brainlit channel. Special thank you to my patrons on Patreon. They always have to deal with me screaming about these elections in the voice chat. If you guys want to support this channel and join my Discord, the links are down below. And I will see you guys next time with a new video about the creepy female teacher.
So I highly recommend Shoe on Head for amusing content. I'll post the link for Shoe's channel. That should be to the main channel. I gotta say, whoever suggested trying dark mode, this is kind of starting to grow on me. That's not bad. I could work with this. I could totally work with this. Yeah. Vote Vermin Supreme, yes. That's literal Shoe on Head. What's the matter, Copter? Sorry to hear that. What's going on? Talk to us. Let's refresh this while Copter's typing. Uh-oh. Dog giving the gotta go outside thing. Hang on a second, I'll see if I can get the wife to help with the dog. for the delay. Okay, I will send you a message. So, yeah. All right, so I'll tell you what. We've been going for a while here. I think I'm going to wrap up early and try and help Copter out. So I want to say thank you to those who came by tonight and apologize for cutting things short early, but I will be back on Wednesday and we'll continue the ongoing discussions and adventure then. So have a good night, everybody, and wish me luck in helping Copter out and sorting out this challenge.